So we've had a little bit different meeting tonight. I did not, we technically started at 6 with a site review. I did not have a call to order at 6 because it was rather informal. So we will call the meeting to order right now at 6:54 to make it formal. Are there any additions, removals, adjustments to the agenda? I have nothing, so we will proceed. Public comment, is there any public comment? Okay. Next item, old business. We have been talking about visioning for continued housing opportunities. And we have Jessica Tietz with us tonight, who is a professor at Middlebury College and political science professor. Her class has in the past done housing studies for Ashland County, along with other sort of local projects, if you will. I've asked her to join us to listen to a dialogue of where we think we may want to go with our continued quest on right size in Bristol for housing, I guess you could say. So she is intending to listen in to us, have a dialogue. I do have AZ has a little cheat sheet, if you will, to prompt the conversation. And then after that, she can, Jessica will talk to us a little bit about what she can do with her class based on what our desires are. I'd like to back up just briefly as well. Let me back up even further. Does that all make sense to you, Jessica?
Yes, that does. And I think, I have a number of students who are really interested in doing research about housing and affordable housing and town regulations about housing and development. And so depending on what your needs are and where you want to go, I might be able to help you with the research part of it. The decision making is all you guys, but maybe I can help you with the research part of it.
Okay, thank you. So backing up to where I was going to back up to AZ, there is a timeline I threw together to kind of, and it's very preliminary, and the only thing that will happen with this thing is it will change. But if you look at it, it's hard to read. But that's why I have my glasses. But as we start talking about housing, if you will, and chewing on that for a period of time, and then make a decision as to if we're gonna revise unified development regulations. I'm sort of thinking, I alluded to our last meeting, is we should chew on it and come up with some sort of outline dialogue, if you will, scope of work, perhaps, is maybe a better way to say it, of what we want to gel. And then revising unified development regulations would ultimately probably be involving a consultant of some sort, whether it's regional planning or a private consultant. And then past that, assuming we do change some stuff, there's an approval process. Obviously, it has to go to the select board and to town vote. That's kind of laid out as well. And we have to keep in mind a little bit, since we are long range planning, that the town plan is due for revision in 2028. So if you look at as we contemplate and give ourselves a little space to talk about what, if anything, we want to change with the zoning UDR, that process can evolve. And as you all know, when we did the bylaw modernization grant, it did evolve a lot long. It took longer than we anticipated. The other thing is we want to make sure that we've got a little bit of time planned so that we can be responsive to revising the town plan, which sounds 2028 sounds like a long ways away. It's not. So I wanted to throw this out and kind of block out in a very preliminary way where we're at and where all this could lead us. So that's gee whiz information. I don't know if anybody's got a strong opinion of it's ahead of us or not. Okay, so I guess Daisy, we could go back to the outline. And then this outline is just meant as a tickler. These are all stuff that all comments that were made early spring, late spring, early summer, when we first started identifying the next direction of what we wanted to work on. So we should, I'm thinking we can go down through these one at a time and kind of freewheel it and talk a little bit to benefit Jessica and exactly where our mindset is with these activities and how they might gel into some sort of process to realize or look at revising things. So the first one is 1 acre zoning in an area that there's to look at, in my estimation. That's just not my personal, it's the author's, my estimation. 3 and 5 acre zoning should be reviewed, not suggesting we trash those districts, just talk about their relevance and possible modification. The proximity of 1 acre zones to the village area deserves a special look. So that comment was made. Is there any input on how near and dear that comment is to us? Rob, you have any?
Well, the 1 acre district is where it starts getting a little trickier because there's not town services typically in there, which could impact development as well as when you start trying to increase density in that area. That is drastic changes in character and development historically for that area as well. So you got to keep that in mind as you start looking at that as well. So
Slim.
I would just say that it seems to me the near the village areas are the ones that should be most concerned with, but also most interested in developing. So people have a nice, easy way to get into town, and it's not that's the energy thing and the whole bit. It's a very well, it's certainly easier for people to do their shopping or keep the town busy and all those good things, done in the right way.
Bill?
This is a general principle. I think we should be very careful in making changes to the zoning rules. Because people have invested in a home and in a neighborhood. And drastic change can be disturbing and create unintended consequences. So I'd want to refresh my memory just where the 1 acre zoning is.
We'll grab a map.
I got it.
it's typically closest to the village, I think, but it does spread out a little bit.
And then goes to 5,
2 and
we don't have too much to it, except the line and
I don't think there's not one. Is there?
There's one in Curtis, RA1. And. The RA1. Which there's none in the village planning area, but up here.
on
Lower Notch.
Showing Notch Road and 116.
I remember some talk, it was a while ago, about that being sort of, remember when the notion of hamlets was kind of hip? Maybe it still is, I don't know, but
Hamlets are still so hip, they are.
Yeah, so
I did a
that was-
presentation on them for you guys.
that was sort of looked at as like hamlet potential down at that intersection. I remember,
It's true. That's what I'm saying, sure.
not that hamlet,
Oh.
different hamlet.
Yeah, RA1 is the only zone that is 1 acre.
That's it.
There's a couple other spots I can.
John?
Yeah, I'd like to look at the 1 acre zoning, see how that's playing. When maybe there's, I mean, I'm all for densification, and maybe that's a first place to look if you're looking for places to densify, but I want to also acknowledge Bill's comment about people who have sort of already gone down the road in a zone like that and have developed a home or a business, whatever, in a zone, given the sort of characteristic that they expect over time. And I think it's we have to proceed carefully if we're going to sort of, I don't know if the right term is down zone that or rezone that to be higher density. So yeah, I'm for that.
Okay. What was the next point? Conduct a housing study, possible interactivity, understand school enrollment.
Can I say something?
And
Melissa.
who are you?
Yeah. Melissa?
Oh,
Melissa.
Ah,
you're coming across as ZE.
Oh, I don't know. That's
Yeah,
weird. I'm signed on the same way.
I'm
But
sorry,
no, that's okay.
I didn't realize it was you.
Yeah, I kind of agree that, look at the 1 acre and then kind of move out from there. That makes sense. But really am interested in seeing what we can do as far as what would be considered, I guess, a small home community, and not like teeny tiny portable thing, but I'm just small homes where we can put several together, but in keeping with, the landscape and the tone of the village, and do whatever we can do for conservation of water and all of that. So that's kind of my thing, is just some small homes, because people are looking for that, and small homes would actually be affordable.
are you talking kind of similar to the cottage park houses and development in that, not necessarily the same way that was designed, but
Where is
size?
that? I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with that.
It's off North Street. It's
Off Oh yeah, but even smaller if we wanted. What's the square footage of those homes?
Double what they originally was supposed to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
did a walkout basement kind of thing and double.
yeah.
Footprints,
But I'm talking, I mean,
Not affordable.
to me, kind of small, under 1,000, but even some, 600-700 square feet. Because with all the like small appliances and things you can do, I think it's still something that people would be looking for. Either people just downsizing and wanting to have just to have a smaller footprint and have everything convenient, or somebody just starting out and it's just them and they want kind of a place of their own, and it's like a starter home.
Okay,
So, I don't know what we can do to encourage that. If somebody owns an acre, like how they can design a kind of little community of small homes. But I really like something I'd like to look at. Thanks.
more like PUDs.
Yeah, all the density and PUD restrictions.
okay, so the next bullet point that we had entertained was conduct a housing study.
I don't know what
Possible-
happened, but I can barely hear you all now.
Ooh,
I haven't changed anything.
That's your volume.
Oh,
How about now?
I can hear you fine. Let me see.
Let me
Now, in
talk,
ter-
let me talk louder. I'm
Yeah.
frequently accused of mumbling.
yeah, it's pretty good. That's all right. Thank you.
Okay, conduct a housing study, possible intern activity or supplemental activity, understand school enrollment. Any thoughts on that? John?
Sorry, I was distracted for a second. Yeah, I mean, I think a housing study would be great if I understand what that means. Is a housing study to analyze what kind of housing we have, which I think we sort of have an idea of, or is a housing study to determine what people think about the housing they would like to see? Because both would be valuable, but they're different.
It's true.
And I have more thoughts on the latter than the former. The former is sort of an inventory. And you know, when almost 20 years ago, we did a survey of town residents, and sort of it was a little cast fairly broadly, I thought. You know, we talked about what their vision for Bristol and that sort of thing. And it was sort of eye-opening. In the end, we learned a few things, I think, that were surprising. So a repeat of that sort of thing might be a very valuable thing if we want to include the public. It draws them in, first of all, makes their their opinions matter, but also maybe gives them enough of a stake that we can attract them into the conversation, which will behoove the process over time if we can. I would like to more deliberately take testimony from the public on certain issues. So, for example, I know we have what I look forward to in conversation about short-term rental type, like Airbnb style rentals and how that might affect us and what we might want to do on that. Great topic. I'm all for examining that. But if we do that, let's invite some people in to make testimony. So some people that run Airbnbs, some people that use Airbnbs, some people that are renters who've been locked out maybe because of Airbnbs, whatever it is, you know, but let's actually seek testimony around these questions. If it is more of the latter type housing study rather than just an inventory. So those are my sort of thoughts. It's a great opportunity, especially with Jessica's help, and if we have students to sort of, you know, fill out the labor on it or whatever, you know, because that can be really labor intensive work.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
I'll say my reasonable suggestions. Always been a concern of mine, how surveys represent fully and accurately the sentiments of the community. Because oftentimes there's a portion of the population that just isn't keen on answering surveys. And so we have to make some judgments and some assessments and ask a lot of questions and then use our own experience.
Yeah.
I have a clarifying question. We had talked about Jessica's class either being qualitative or quantitative analysis. This is in regards to the housing study. I guess that's more of a question for you, Jessica.
Yeah, so my course is qualitative research methods, but we include surveys in that too. And so usually we try to use a couple different methods to get at whatever we're trying to uncover. So with the housing study that we did in Bristol, we did focus groups. We did that with the Bristol Elder Eagles, and then also with the renters at Firehouse Apartments, so low income and elderly populations, which we knew from our surveys were the two populations that were having the hardest time finding affordable housing. And then we also did interviews, but the interviews focused more on the people who were developing properties and regulators who were making the regulations. What we found though is that Bristol doesn't really have a housing problem. It has a housing bottleneck. So a lot of older residents are interested in moving into smaller houses or houses where they don't have to maintain the roof and do snow removal and do all of these things. For a lot of the people that we surveyed and we spoke to, they were talking about the challenges and trying to find people to come do little jobs like that for them around the house. We also spoke to a couple of people who were recently widowed and, you know, living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. The problem is that there is nowhere like that that they can move to in Bristol, and this is where all of their friends and support networks are. So they would be really interested in moving into, you know, a small apartment or townhome or cottage, you know, something smaller where they wouldn't be responsible for snow removal and mowing and fixing the roof and doing all that sort of stuff. If those houses were open, a lot of the crunch in the housing market would go away for single family homes. But it's really challenging. So Elise at Addison Housing Works was talking about the challenges in developing that sort of housing, and it's mostly a wastewater problem. So if you want to build an apartment building, you can't have a septic system. You have to be able to connect to the town wastewater and sewer system, which is very, very expensive. There are grants for it, but they're not 100%, right? Like you'd have to bond for it, and then you have to maintain those facilities. So like if we look at Virgins and we look at Middlebury, they're both going through really, really expensive processes right now with their wastewater system. So that was sort of the challenge then that we ran into, is that the type of housing that we need really depends on having some sort of municipal wastewater system that could be expanded. One of the ideas we also talked about was in Waitsfield, they have taken their town gravel pit, and they're thinking about trying to change that into like apartments and affordable housing. Bristol also has a town gravel pit that's reaching the end of its life, and we'll have to do something with it. So that is town-owned land that could be converted for affordable housing projects. But again, it could be connected to the water line through the high school, but not necessarily the sewer system. Plus there's the hill. So, you know, I don't know if that's a good location to put senior housing. So those were some of the problems that we uncovered in our first round of research. And I have a couple of ideas for maybe projects that they could help you with based on your conversation, but I didn't know if you wanted to go through the rest of your document first, and then I can share some ideas and see what you think of those.
Sounds like we're interested in listening to you, Jessica.
Okay. It's hard when you're on Zoom because you can't really read the room, right? I can only see 1 or 2 people at a time. So in listening to your conversation, the 2 big issues that seemed to come up in what you were talking about, one was trying to look at best practices in Vermont. So what are other municipalities doing? What are, you know, towns and villages in Vermont? So these would all be places that are under the same state laws and state guidance, but might have different municipal regulations for zoning. And so one thing that students could do is they could review all of the, you know, new policies or proposed policies for different towns and try to make a map of some best practices. It could be that they're all trying to do the same things, right? Like modular housing or something like that. But it could be that there are some really innovative ideas that are happening in other places, like that Waitsfield example of, you know, developing the gravel pit. So that could be one thing that the students could do, is they could sort of create a map of best practices. You know, what do we see around the state of Vermont? And they could go more broadly, but you know, other states have different laws, so I just don't know how useful that would be. It might be better just to stay in Vermont. The other thing that the students could help with would be to help in this process of community consultation first and then community education later. What we found in doing the surveys is that, You did see a little bit of pushback about keeping the aesthetic character of Bristol and people being concerned about development, like right up, on the border of their property. There were a lot of references to Garfield Street and sort of putting up something that would be big and imposing right on the border of their property. So we did see those sort of aesthetic concerns. But we thought we would see a lot more of that, and we really didn't. Most people who took the survey and most people that we talked to recognized there was a need for affordable housing, especially for, young families that wanted to move into the area, and that this was desirable, something that they all wanted, and that they were willing to deal with any inconveniences, like maybe some of these would become Airbnbs, maybe some of these, they might not like, or they might be closer to their property line. So what we found instead was that, people seemed to really understand that there was a need for it, and so we needed to pursue density. So what the students could help with is to try to arrange community consultation, so focus groups or surveys or different ways of collecting feedback. And then depending on how you thought you might want to change the regulations, they could also help you craft a campaign about how do you do community outreach and education. I think there's actually a lot of latent support for the changes that you might want to make. The question is, how do you address the concerns that people might have and just make sure that people understand what's happening and why? Even educated people, when they try to read the zoning and housing regulations, get really confused. And so, having some sort of outreach or campaign like flyers or posters or things that are easy to understand might be helpful too. So those are two of the ideas I had, the best practices and then the community consultation and education. The third project would be, and I don't know how feasible this might need to be professionals and not students, but just to see what the possibility would be for extending the wastewater and sewer in Bristol. If there are certain places in Bristol where that would be less expensive and more feasible. Like I know that there are lots of existing lines. And so if places that were being developed for apartments or senior housing, if those were near those lines, would that then reduce the cost? By how much? Does that then make it viable? So I don't know if the students could really do that. I think that would probably be beyond their capabilities and mine too. So you might need
The
professionals
select
for
board
that.
has 1 or 2 reports from Green Mountain Engineering on that historically.
Yeah, and it's really expensive. That's the problem. And so they have, the grants. I forget what they call that one. There's like the clean water and the drinking water, I think, are the two different funds. But they're really challenging to get that kind of money for, and you still have to bond for them. So in addition to the money, the 2 point something million dollars that we would ask voters to bond for in November for the next stage of the water pipelines project, then you would have to ask people to bond on top of that. Like, is that even feasible? That's the challenge.
There is somewhere there's a shovel-ready plan to, I think, double the capacity of the downtown sewer system, and it's sort of in the file, if I'm not mistaken. It's a few years old at least, but it was intended to be one of those things where we, let's get as close as we can to a finished proposal and see if we can get it funded from powers that be, whatever, feds, I guess. And so we might start with that. That might at least be a document that gives you some basic parameters, like what's the next step for the system we have that serves the, 40 properties or whatever downtown. And then
Yeah.
to go from there, because the development, at least the commercial development that has often been complained, like the lack of septic has hindered some development. And but most of that is not, outside of the village or even outside of downtown. It's downtown or the periphery of downtown. So that one jump in the downtown septic system capacity would, if it were done just overnight, it would be a big leap in
Yeah.
what might be possible, but
I think there's also alternative methodology that is being looked at as well as in conjunction with or instead of injection.
Yeah, right. Right, I mean, there are alternatives to sort of your traditional tertiary treatment or secondary treatment that, you know, we all seen the big tanks like in Virgins and all that, and nobody has one. But we are blessed with gravel here, so maybe that gives us an edge in some places at least, you know.
So listening to what Jessica said to this point, does any of it sound appealing?
Yes,
Is there questions or interest in pursuing something more? Or asking more questions to better understand what she's talking about? Think, well,
That's what I was doing, I was thinking. I mean, I think probably some sort of the best practices sounds most helpful to us in my mind. The community consultation and education portion of that would be helpful, but that's something that I think would really have to be steered, and a lot of kind of guidance on, you know, is it singularly topic focused, and what is that topic, and so on and so forth, because it's so broad. And if you're going through all that, you want to make sure you're presenting the right stuff as well, and not just try to go too scattershot. It's not going to be very effective. So I think that best practices of alternative approaches and solutions for zoning and other housing would be most helpful for us as we're moving into the UBR tweaks, as well as the future town plan tweaks.
And oh, sorry. John, did you have your hand up?
I was Slim was actually speaking.
I
Okay.
agree with Rob, and of course, we must know where, let's say well, of course, we know where our gravel pit is, but other suitable areas that would be possible. It sounds like wastewater is probably the big issue.
Huge.
So you gotta just look at where those places are acceptable and then try to make something work. I mean, it seems like.
I think that maybe goes back to a density study. Perhaps, so I didn't hear, I'm interjecting out of turn.
It's okay.
But I didn't hear.
That's your prerogative.
No, it's not. When you were discussing, particularly the first item with reviewing other towns and stuff, but we talk, or I've heard over time, a lot of, well, we think we know where the density is across the town, not so much the village. Although we debated that when we were looking at the bylaw one, which was monetization, but. And I don't know if we have collectively a good sense of the data that would show you where the densities are and where it makes sense to do like you were talking about, where to try to encourage change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're looking to make it affordable, trying to develop in places where you already have sidewalks is really useful, or a bus route. The sidewalk budget every year is overspent. So trying to put in a sidewalk, out to somewhere where it doesn't exist is just really, really challenging. So that's something that I would suggest that, if there are places where they're already connected to the town infrastructure, that should then bring down the cost. That's the problem with the gravel pit idea, is that, it's town property, so it could be transferred for development for affordable housing easily by the town. But then you have to connect all of the systems. Water wouldn't be such a problem because it is over to the woodland apartments on one side of the road, and then also from the school, sort of at the top. So water isn't such a problem, but you know, for people living down there, how would they access the town? So that would be challenging.
Funicular.
That's right. Or just a hike, right? Just get on the Bristol Trail Network and hike up to town.
Yeah.
So Bill, have you got any thoughts about what Jessica's mentioned?
I think the best practices would be helpful. Looking at how other towns have addressed these issues, affordable housing density. Taking into account that they have, in many cases, different kinds of infrastructure than the way I was thinking of. There was quite a controversy some years ago about reclassifying part of the river as I think it was the C zone as opposed to a or B. And because there had been a C zone reserved 40, 50 years ago. And there was objection to that, but you require that if you're going to have a treatment plant of any kind. So that would require a change in the zoning of the river. And I think that would be met with a fair amount of objection. So we just have to remember as we review what other towns are doing, that sometimes they have different opportunities and different limitations than we do.
Okay, John, do you have any?
Yeah, Jessica, I don't know if this would fit or not, but as these guys know, well, I'm big for density. I'm definitely an advocate for density and live it myself, and have developed it over time. But I'm also concerned with the impacts of density, noise, the sort of quality of life type impacts that, if not addressed, if you don't get ahead of them, you might turn density into a dirty word, basically, as people get lights, noise thrust into their faces as neighbors of these things. So I wonder if there isn't, the second thought there is infill development without having to think about a new sewer set or septic system or whatever is almost the quickest way to go, right? Because we have, at least in the village and close to the village and other spots around town, there's on-site septic. So, that's sort of the lowest hurdle to new housing, when you don't need a mound system or a centralized system. So we have that advantage now. I'm glad to see that people are applying for ADUs and stuff, but I really want to make sure that we address the potential, get ahead of the things that might ultimately make people oppose density in their neighborhood. So the way some towns do that is to have noise ordinances, light ordinances, that kind of thing, that are sort of give zoning authorities, or in some cases the police, if it's a noise thing, some ability to say, hey, you potential offender, you're maybe violating this ordinance. Right now that they don't have that tool. If you have a neighbor who makes a lot of noise and you call the chief of police on a Friday night, he's going to say, I can't really do anything. That's what they say in Bristol, because they don't have there's not a lot for them to do with, they don't have the regulations in place that allow them to say, hey, neighbor, you got to tone down your noise or redirect your lights or whatever. So I'm interested in those things that make density work really, really well. I travel around the country and I see places that do it well or badly. And the ones that do it well are, they're more attractive communities over time. And so I am, I want to see density, a big advocate of density, but I want to make sure that we get ahead of it. And so I want to know I don't know if you guys, this is sort of in the best practices place, are there simple ordinances that small towns like us have that give the ability for the zoning authorities and the police to say, hey, here's a noise issue, or here's a light issue, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely adopt things like that. And then also you can adopt, how many, based on bedrooms, how many people can be living on in a property. So there are definitely ordinances that you can adopt. The problem is just the enforcement of it. So it requires the police to be able to go there when they receive the call and then have some way of measuring the noise. Sometimes this is just a judgment call. And other times, the AARP has a sort of noise ordinance policy that they're advocating for different communities. And that's where you actually measure, using an app on your phone or some other device where you actually measure how loud something is. So there are different ways of doing that. The problem is that the more ordinances we create, the more enforcement we need, which then we have to hire more police. And that's sort of a fraught issue given the way that we fund the police just inside of the village. So we would have to then think about expanding the police, or paying for the police at least, which would then also expand the size as they have to cover more territory. So it's sort of a challenging issue. You can definitely create more ordinances, but then you have to think about the enforcement of those, and it just gets more expensive. But maybe there are other alternatives other than just ordinances, like, maybe certain ways of planning. Um, we could add that in though, as so we can ask the students who want to work on the project to look at best practices. They can look in Vermont for just overall best practices, and then maybe look a little bit more broadly in other communities in the US for how do you do infill in a way that neighbors, like, and doesn't cause problems with existing neighbors. So we can try to look and see if there are communities that have done that really well.
Wouldn't we have to know, say, how many calls our police get at night, every night, to know if we would need to expand the police?
Yeah, so if you look at the Bristol Police Department logs, they usually they publish those in the Addison Independent, but they're also available on the town website. You can see when the calls are coming in. Right now, the police are saying that they probably need to hire at least one more full-time officer to handle the call volume. They've just sort of had an explosion in calls, a lot of mental health challenges and substance abuse issues, and just lots of things that take a long time to address, right? It's not like stopping a car that's speeding. These are sort of
Yeah.
ongoing issues. We did just hire a community resource specialist who will be starting in early November, who will be able to help with things like non-law breaking activity, right? So where you might need some sort of liaison with the police, but not necessarily a police officer. So hopefully
That's
that will
good.
help a little bit. Yeah,
Yes, that's much better to call them than the police for mental health issues,
right.
you know?
So it's not that ordinances shouldn't be looked at, but it would be nice if we could find some good cases where they're sort of mixing an ordinance in with maybe some other measures as well. So we could try to look for those and see what people are doing.
You have anything else, Melissa? Based on what?
No, those sound good, the best practices in the housing survey, but yeah, I agree, getting uh community input is very important. Eek.
So it sounds like for your timing, thinking back to that timeline that you shared, um, it seems like the best practices that would be helpful first. And then, as Robert was saying, then to think more about like community consultation and education at the very end or near the end. For the timing for best practices, when would that be helpful for your group?
I'll go out on a limb here. I have been thinking for a while along the same lines in a different approach being that if we could, and I think it could go tandem with the students doing things as well, because they could analyze and gel things, but I've been thinking for a while that it would be nice if we had some interaction with some of the area towns, specifically Middlebury and Heinsberg, maybe Virgins as well, that have a planning department and have much more depth and have developed more with their regulations and get some sense directly from those people in a maybe ideally a presentation format of the hows and whys and what fors. And I don't know if that we can do that. You got to get somebody's attention to talk to us, obviously. And I'm not sure if that's complimentary. I'm sort of thinking it could be. Or if the sense is it's not complimentary, then I think having the students do a certain amount of work or doing the work would be great. And you know, and it's part of the reason that whole chew the conversation chewing, which is the review housing town-wide thing is up there for, what is it, it's up there for a year, is to really take a deep dive into some of those concepts. Does any of that make sense to, let's start with Jessica and then we go around the room.
Yes, in talking to Addison County Regional Planning Commission, there were, most of the towns in Addison County are sort of in the same stage that we're in. So there's a lot of discussion, but there aren't necessarily a lot of solutions. The most advanced one that we saw was in Middlebury, that what are they calling it? Stone crop development, I think is the name of it. That the college helped purchase and fund that project. And then there was also, I'm blanking on the name of the town, a very, very small town. It might have been Cornwall. I'll have to check my email to see. They also were having conversations, but again, they don't really have any plans in place. So we can definitely see if something's happened in Addison County, that might be a good model, but we might have to look a little further afield in Vermont. We would probably be looking for places that have tried to already implement these so that we could get an assessment or an evaluation of like, is it working? You know, what are the advantages? What are the problems? That would be ideal. So if we can find cases like that, I think that they would be more useful. But we'll definitely check Addison County cases as well.
So what are the thoughts about how we approach it? Rob?
I think anytime we have that information, it's good and will be helpful as long as we're still in that conversation phase of reviewing everything. I mean, when we start talking about housing and opportunities and zoning, there's so much more at play with that than just how do we help it because of development opportunities and limitations thereof in terms of available utilities, municipal utilities, as well as if land available, if it's in agricultural use, current use, if it's something that could even be developed, if it's even an option, as well as the cost. There's been mention of senior housing and different housing availabilities for those to relocate out of their existing larger homes. But the cost and everything else that leads those projects on also ends up turning those projects into other things. The Firehouse Apartments was originally a senior housing community of small 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom cottages. That's what that was. And then it turned into the Firehouse Apartments because the development got sold, right? So that's one of the things that no matter what we want to do, we can't control. And I don't know if there's any way to encourage that stuff, because I think any sort of regulations we tried to put into place to help promote that stuff would be discriminatory towards other practices, other housing opportunities. So I don't think that that's anything we could do.
What was that last bit? I must have.
If you were trying to put in regulations to promote one type of housing, it would be seen as discriminatory against others, right? So you couldn't necessarily do that and say only senior housing in here, no anything else, right? Right.
Yeah, there's gotta be a way to incentivize without like,
Yeah,
you know,
it,
saying,
it would be maybe in something terms of a density bonus or something
Yeah.
like that. But
I'll give you, if I could break in, because this seems relevant. I mean, I have a 12,000 square foot building on Mountain Street. And I tried to talk to various affordable housing agencies over the last couple of years. I'm like, let me hand this over to you. I'll sell it to you for a good rate, you know. There's a lot of reasons why it, from an economic point of view, would like to be a good buy for them. And with a minimal amount of renovation, it could be, instead of being 4 huge apartments, it could be 8 good sized 1-bedroom apartments. You know, I don't have the wherewithal as a private individual to pull that off, but some agency could. But when I went looking, the answer I got in so many words was, we only like to build from empty ground. We don't renovate. We don't take over buildings and turn them into other things, because that's not what the federal or the state subsidies do. Like, they don't exist for that. They exist for filling empty land, which is a little surprising. I mean, I was surprised, but I don't know if there's anything on a town-wide level that we could do to incentivize as opposed to regulate our way that way. But if there were, Jessica, I don't know if there's creative things that towns like Bristol or maybe even bigger towns have done out there that get at that goal without regulating your way, without saying you can't do this here, rather here, if you do this here, it's sort of like the density bonus. You meet these certain rules and you get a little extra square footage on your lot. I don't know, some corollary like that.
So we didn't see an example like that in Vermont, but we can look again. The example that we saw was in Connecticut, and there I think this is at the statewide level, but I'd have to check and see. But they changed the regulations about what you need to do in order to renovate different places, so that it became less costly. And so people then you saw companies sort of to fill in this space. Right now, the cost of renovation is so high that it's not profitable for most of these companies to do it. And that's why they like to build from the ground up. But if we could reduce regulations about how to renovate these places, that would be one possibility. Obviously not safety regulations, but there are lots of other things too. I forget what it was. It was something like whether you have to have a built-in kitchen or things like that. So we could include that case study from Connecticut so that we could see what they had done to encourage renovation instead of new builds.
I'd also be interested, because I'm just thinking back, and I know I've mentioned this to you guys before, but maybe this is something your students could go out and troll for. But there's a VPR report now, several years old, about a group house in Randolph. They took over one of those huge old Victorians in Randolph, like 8 bedrooms or something. And instead of making it like a nursing home, it's just a group home. So they avoid the sort of medical level code enforcement that is required of a nursing home or anything higher than that. It's just a group home. It's a bunch of elders who live in this house, and they hire a staff member to help them with food, and they hire a staff person to help with cleaning the house. Otherwise, it's just a group home. If you need nursing, that's on you. You can bring it in, or maybe you need to leave the community and go to it, but whatever. And it's like this in-between level that to me, when I heard that report, it stuck with me, obviously, several years later, because of like, wow, that's sort of like this niche, unfulfilled niche, where if we had places that could do that on a coordinated basis, it could open up some of those, like you said, the bottleneck, I think you referred it to. and open up some big new housing. And maybe there's a way, in a coordinated way, to do this sort of group house level thing. And I don't know if that gets written into the regs or if it's just something else, but I don't know if there's anybody doing something interesting out there that your students might discover.
So-
Yeah, we can definitely look. The most of the information we found about co-housing was that it appeals to some people, but not a lot. So a lot of people, you know, they want their privacy, they want their own apartment. So it's not that you can't find people who look for that, but usually it's not like a huge amount of people. They would prefer apartments instead.
So to take that a little bit further, boarding houses 50 years ago were common. There were several in Bristol Village, matter of fact.
Yeah.
And it's become a dirty word. It's connotated with transients and all that sort of stuff. But you know, I think when John's talking about group houses, all of a sudden I'm thinking about boarding houses. As a very similar thing, you have you'd have your bedroom and a common dining room or whatever,
Yeah.
common meals or
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So, you know, maybe there's something there to consider as well.
Are these illegal now?
I think we have, and I don't know the details, but we have the term boarding house in our regulations.
Yeah,
I
some
think
places it's a prohibited use, some places.
I think there's like I said, I think there's a connotation that they're slums or something, you know,
Yeah.
put it more direct.
Hippie house.
The house on the corner of Mountain Street in
Yeah.
Maine was just such a place.
Yep,
And
it was.
couple of owners ago, the couple who had started to do that renovation on that house walked me through it very early in the stages. This is like almost 20 years ago. And there had been a toilet installed in each room, just freestanding.
Oh,
Yeah.
nothing below it?
Well, something below it, but I mean, not like in a bathroom, you know, it's just,
Okay.
there's like a piece of furniture in every room, every principal room. And
Sure,
Yeah.
not.
It's allowed. Boarding houses are allowed, site plan review for residential, office and commercial and village mixed zones, and then conditional use in HDR and VR.
right.
And in the regs, it's a very specific definition. It's an owner occupied single family dwelling with one common kitchen facility that provides lodging for not more than 6 people on a long-term, non-transient basis.
There used to be this thing, I don't know, some of my favorite buildings in New York City were residence hotels, right? Like the Ansonia Apartments, beautiful old building on the Upper West Side. It has these 2 huge dining rooms that are no longer dining rooms, they're now community spaces for the condos that their buildings are now. But back in the day, if you rented an apartment upstairs, you could subscribe to meals, 1, 2, or 3 meals a day. All you got to do is show up at the, within the bracketed hours, and you get that meal. And it's like the subscription dining. And as a single person living alone at home, like sometimes I think it would be nice to have that option, even in a small town, and maybe there's something we could do. Anyway,
People wanna move out of mom and dad's house from their single bedroom existence, shared everything else.
yes,
Pay the rent for boarding house.
Right. right.
Melissa, do you have any further thoughts or comments based on what we've been talking?
No, I mean, the surveys sound good. And I mean, the small home idea is kind of where I was thinking with elders or even younger people. I mean, it's just everybody's so fiercely independent in Vermont. So I don't know how much, co-housing or, group home kind of idea would work. Like Jessica said, there's just not that many people that seem that interested in living that way. Because if people are used to living in their own home for 50 years, they might want to still have a home, but just much smaller. But that could also fit in with, if it's a small community, to have, for it to include, plowing, shoveling, that kind of thing, mowing.
Okay, let's circle back, Jessica, and what do you, based on, we didn't go down through our whole list, but I think you got the sense of what a rather painful one by one bullet would have gotten us to anyway. But what are our next steps? What do you see as our next steps?
So I think that I could assemble a group of students who were interested in working on this project and start them over the winter term. So that would be January and February, where I would want them to talk to Addison County Regional Planning Commission and to Addison Housing Works and a couple other places, Vermont League of Cities and Towns, where they aggregate information. So to collect that information first, that's already been put together. And then I think over the spring semester, we could then, once we've identified those good cases, then we could sort of drill down and figure out what's happening in those cases and write up sort of mini case studies. So like really, really short case studies just about how are they incentivizing the development, how are towns incentivizing development, and then this range of creative housing options. You know, what are they incentivizing? What does the final project look like? And so once we put that together, then the students could present that to you, let you read it, discuss it. And then if there were a couple of those that you found really intriguing, maybe we could then move forward with inviting those people over Zoom. They don't have to be in person, but you know, maybe we could have conversations with people from those towns and just ask questions about how they did it, problems they've encountered, things they wish they had done differently. And then based on all of that, that might lead you into that next stage of, you know, trying to get more community consultation or more logistical information about where the density can happen. Does that sound good? That would mean that you would have information probably like March or April to start with. And then moving into May, we could reach out to some of the places that you'd be interested in and have a conversation with them.
Again, I'm seeing a lot of head nods. Um,
They're good
So-
to me.
thank you. Yeah, thanks, Melissa. So, what do you need from us to start that process?
Nothing from you other than what you've already given me. So I've already sketched out what the project would look like and what the next couple of steps are. So what I'll do is, first of all, locate the students and then figure out whether they get credit or whether they get paid, you know, how to do their internships. Usually they prefer credit, so that's easy. So I'll set up a couple of independent studies then with the students and give them a little bit of training in methodology. And then a lot of what we do is sort of we learn as we go. So we would go ahead and get started then over the winter term. So January and February, we would collect information and then start assembling the case studies. So I think what I would do is probably just keep you updated. And if you wanted, you know, updates from the students as they went through the process, they could definitely do that. Otherwise, we would just plan to deliver those best practices to you probably again in like March or April, I would think. And then the students could meet with you once you looked over those, answer questions, and then we could move forward with having conversations with those other towns. So I wouldn't need anything from you unless you wanted updates from the students periodically, and then we would just want to figure out when to do that.
So what's the interest in updates?
Yeah.
Every couple months,
Yeah.
quarterly?
Yeah, so
Every
we could
month? I do a lot.
so we could have our winter term goes most of January into very early February. So once I recruit the students and figure out a date that's good for them, I can just email you and have you add it to whatever date you know, meeting that works for. So it would be end of January, beginning of February.
Okay. Um. What should we, as a planning commission, be doing from your point of view to supplement what you envision as your activity?
I mean, I think your earlier idea, Kevin, about reaching out to other towns and seeing what their conversations are. Again, I haven't seen them develop plans yet, but that doesn't mean that they're not coming up with ideas and having the same conversations that you are. So I think it would be really profitable to talk to the other towns and see what they're thinking about and what their issues are. And also talking to Addison Housing Works, talking to Elise, I think would be really good. She just knows so much. So every time I have a question about housing, I ask her first, and I have a library of her emails that tell me everything I need to know. So she's an amazing resource. And then Andrew LaRoe at Addison County Regional Planning Commission. He is also a really good resource and has been looking at this topic for a while now. And so he also might know of some good case studies. I was going to reach out to him also, but he would be happy to come and talk to the commission.
Okay. Great. Any closing thoughts amongst the table?
Oh,
Sounds great.
thank you.
Any
Okay.
closing thoughts, Jessica? Or-
No, just I'll go ahead and get started. There will be, you know, radio silence from me for a little bit because of all the emails and meetings and all that sort of stuff that I'll need to have. But once I've assembled the team of students, I'll send you just information about them, you know, their names, who they are, what they want to do. And then we can go from there.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to visit with us.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, you know, feel free to reach out to me. And if you know, once a professor, always a professor. But if I find good articles, I can forward them to you, Kevin, and you could share them with the commission
Oh, that'd be
too.
great. That'd be great.
Okay, I'll give you some reading homework.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah. See, you won't miss much if you wait. There is a renovation project I heard about in St. Johnsbury.
Oh, I'm from there. Was it the, on the corner of
Yeah.
rail? Yeah, that was a really excellent project.
Yeah.
Sorry to steal the thunder, I
That's-
grew up there.
There's plenty of thunder to go around. And I think the group that's worked on that and similar ones, not as big, it's called Rural Edge. I think it's the name.
I can't remember that, but I remember they did a really great job
Yeah.
because before they came in and did that renovation, that building, all the storefronts did not have any running water to them, which was crazy. Or like any bathrooms, and the housing stock there was definitely run down and degraded. But since the renovation, every single storefront in that building is occupied with thriving businesses, and then they have affordable housing and also just housing, which is a huge boost for St. Johnsbury, where housing is just not really available for a lot of people, and also for a downtown that was actively decaying. I'm from there, I can call it. I can be mean about it, I grew up there.
Okay, even if you weren't. So that's one, and there must be some kind of grant program. to help with that, so if we can learn about that. It will be useful information perhaps to you. The other thought that comes to mind is one that Art Wolf first mentioned to me a while back. And he said, because of the escalator effect on people grading up as they go through their life cycle, obviously at some point they need to downsize, but that might not be for some number decades. That if you add to the housing stock at almost any of them, especially at the middle level or perhaps slightly above the middle level, you're going to open up affordable housing. That otherwise would not be opened up.
Yeah.
So that's something that we should keep in mind as well.
There was, I spent some time in LA like right before COVID, and I remember on the public radio station out there was an ongoing debate about, LA, like the ground zero housing crisis, right? And there's a debate one day on the radio about, oh, they're building like expensive housing in X town and, outside of LA, and is that helping or not? And the answer I wasn't sure there was a definitive answer, but the one that seemed interesting to me is that you build a house and yeah, it's on the higher end of the affordability sector, but it creates housing and those people move up and that creates an opening, sort of like she was saying for the bottleneck for, elders and younger families, same idea, like create the housing, move people through it, and seems to work,
Well, I feel like the inverse would happen in Bristol, where you have a population of folks who are living in 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 2-bedroom houses that they no longer can move in if there's stairs and mobility issues.
Yeah.
Or just like maintenance of taking care of a roof, of plowing, of shoveling, of driving down dirt like far roads. Like, you have these people who are out there, and if they have the opportunity to move into like a smaller home closer to the village, a family that might be living in a 2-bedroom apartment in the village or elsewhere, Lincoln, who knows what they're doing out in Lincoln, could move into that 3-bedroom and kind of do a little swap around.
Yeah, I mean, one of the fundamental things is way beyond our control, which is the cost of stick building, and prefab is different, but stick building is, if you're lucky, it's only $300 a square foot nowadays. If you're lucky, if you want to meet the energy code and that sort of thing. So 1,000 square foot unit or house or whatever, 300,000, doesn't include land costs. So then you're up to 400. And who can get in that as a starter house or a finisher house? It doesn't exist.
I saw I can't remember where it was now. Sorry, remember what city it was, but it was somebody who owned a business, and they were having trouble finding affordable housing for the people that worked at there. It was like a factory or something. And so they actually bought a plot of land that was supposed to be used to put like these really big houses on, and that development company never did it. So they bought it and they built individual small homes in kind of a community. And I was like, these look a little odd, but the size. And what they did to save is they built the dimensions to the dimensions of the building material. So they never wasted
No
anything.
cuts.
And
Yeah.
I mean, it just looked fantastic. I mean, to me, the houses were a little close together, but I mean, it's possible we could do that. And they were 2-story, but yeah, I mean, you can do that. And there's a lot of ways to cut costs that aren't like, you're not making the home unsafe or uninhabitable or uncomfortable, but doing things like that. And it was the way they designed them in kind of a circle, and the way they angled them, that everybody could look out their window, but they could not see into anybody else's home. It just looked fantastic. Anyway, I decided I'd throw that out.
Well, the cotton mill in Lakeside Avenue in Burlington had a whole housing development for their work staff in the 1800s, so.
Yeah.
It's not a new concept.
Yeah.
Company housing.
Yeah,
Company store.
Company store.
There's,
Yeah, it's just nobody's done it for hundreds of years.
if you ever drive out Interstate 80, you're in the middle of Wyoming, there's Sinclair, Wyoming, and it's 100% company town. And it's actually on the national register because and not only is it fascinating just as a piece of architecture, a piece of development, I mean, it's absolutely in this dead plain, but it's a huge refinery. And you go there and the entire town's built, there's 200 people live there, but it has this cohesive design, has this sort of Western motif and all these common facilities, and the refinery still goes great guns, and you can get right up to it's like the closest you can get to a refinery in the country probably, but the company town is right there. It's really cool.
Let's bring it back.
Yeah, I don't know.
Bring back
So
Lords too.
Let's close it up for this activity. I think we had a great discussion. I do not have any new business underneath administrative matters. We have the September 17th minutes to review and approve, which are right there.
Yeah,
Need 'em?
yeah.
I don't think I can participate. I wasn't a party.
Me too, and let's abstain, if you so choose. Just keep in mind that there seems to be a tradition to approve minutes. We were just reviewing them for correctness.
I had no changes to that.
No.
I don't know if we've got enough people to vote
It's
on
two
it.
Yeah.
abstained, it'd be 4 of us.
So.
Better you than me.
Everybody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you're definitely voting on this one.
Yeah, all in favor? Say aye, raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay,
Well, I guess I'm abstaining
oh,
yeah.
John's abstaining, okay.
for having been absent.
The next item was update from the hazard mitigation plan update steering committee. Shannon's not here.
Which hazard? There's so many.
So
All of
it's
Mitigate all
the
hazards.
plan.
Good, I like that idea.
It's like,
Please.
yeah, they're all, it's just like
Let's just mitigate them all.
that whole concept of hazards is the worst part of my job when I had one. And I neglected to do it, but item C should have been, zoning administrators update, if you want to be informal enough, that AZ has prepared some stuff for it.
Yeah, I put together just a little written report.
I got
This is just something I put together. I welcome feedback. Just broke it up into kind of administrative things that I've been doing. Things related directly to permits. And then kind of looking more at the planning aspect of my role.
Thank
Of what that could be moving forward. And the other piece of paper is a zoning report of all permits that have been passed or approved in September. Actually not just approved, but the one side is building only and the other side is not building.
Like subdivision.
Can you,
Oh, I can,
Can
yeah,
you-
Yep. sorry, Melissa.
You could probably email it to Melissa.
yeah, if you can email it, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks. These are helpful. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very good. Thank you very much.
I'll email those to you after this meeting or tomorrow morning, depending on.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I can do that. Just depending on my computer, if it wants to work, that's the real issue. But yeah, I take a moment to like look at the report. If there's anything you want me to flesh out when writing it. Or anything you'd like to see less of. Your feedback is welcome always.
I like the format, it's really good.
Yeah.
Melissa, your email is
Can you, wait a minute, am I on mute? Okay, can you actually send it to my business email? Because it's just,
Yeah.
I get less email there, it's easier to see it. It's just the name of the store, so it's Recycled Reading of Vermont at yahoo.com. Vermont is spelled out, yeah.
gotcha.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments for AC?
Oh, not crazy.
I had one thing I just want to get into the minutes, just to let you know that the closed captioning with Zoom is amazing.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
It's so good. It's
like-
so good.
It generates it instantly?
Yeah, I mean, pretty quickly too.
Is it
And sometimes, well, I mean, it's like closed captioning on YouTube or anything.
Some words could
Yeah.
go south.
No, but sometimes what it does is it starts writing it, and the person said and then started talking, and it backed up and took out the and continued. I don't know how it did that, but
Yeah.
That's wild.
It puts.
It
together
is.
A meeting summary too.
Like-
Um,
Like textual?
yeah, like breaks it up.
Wow,
Oh,
It's
wow.
not always the most accurate. Sometimes.
gotta check it.
Yeah, you gotta like,
Good foundation.
yeah.
Good foundation.
It's a
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Number.
Interesting though. I'm so I don't know any of that, what's going on at all.
Crazy
That's
computer
starting to-
stuff.
yeah.
No, I've avoided it.
So.
Although I need all the I can get, but.
Next thing is public comment. I don't think we have any public comment, but John wants to say something if we want.
Yeah, I just
Wait
want,
and give the floor to John.
I just want to quickly explain my absences of the last year. It's been a year I've been spending, since a little over a year, I've been spending half my time in New York, and in the last 6 months, more than half my time taking care of my 90-year-old parents. Pretty straightforward. A lot of you guys have experience with that. You know what that's like.
Mhm.
And while at times for some of the meetings we've had, I've been available like physically, no bandwidth left. So I think I'm turning the corner there. So I hope to be back to normal participation. So I appreciate your patience with all that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next thing is to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So,
Motion to adjourn.
second.
Rob, John seconds.
By
All
claim.
those in- All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining?